Hello, hello, hello. The bar is once again open, and today we discuss camera phone photography, the sad news about Remi Enigma, and James Bond. Is he still as iconic as ever, or is he now a busted flush?
Well, welcome. Well, before we get into all of that, Cam's got a couple of things he would like to say.
I do, Mark, and I just wanted to say that, guys, if you enjoy the show, make sure to support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, all of which will be linked in the show notes. Please also leave us that 5-star review on your favorite podcast apps, such as Spotify and Apple Podcast, and it's your support that helps this show going. So with that, Mark, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I would just like to add something to that little preamble that you did there. We do have a Patreon account as well now. We do, yeah. So please do check out our Patreon account. If you like what you see, go on and subscribe, because any support we get will be really helpful. So yeah, please do follow us on that.
Yeah, there we go. So yes, Mark, are you okay? You've been on a shoot this morning, haven't you?
Yes. So it's one of those shoots where you kind of do a little bit of shooting and then you haven't got much to do for a bit and you do other work and then you go back to the shoot later on in the evening. So yeah, it's some Indian pre-wedding shoots. It's like the traditional sort of Mayan this morning, which has been done, and they're doing like a Bollywood evening. That's gonna be lots of fun, lots of dancing, I'm sure. Not by me, obviously. But yeah, so it'll be good fun.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm recording this pod in between, and I, in the meantime, have been still working our way through some the graduation stuff that we've been doing recently, and lots of images to sort out for all of that. So mine's been real sort of office-based stuff at the moment, rather than actually going out to shoot. So good stuff. So Mark, everyone's a photographer these days, aren't they?
Or they at least think they are.
Yeah, and I'm talking really about phones, and let's be honest, our phones are taking great pictures, and the quality of what they do, is getting better and better. And I know a lot of people, will take really good photos, and it's their introduction into photography for a lot of people, into the world of actual photography. But I think there's a point though where people think that everything they can do can be done on a phone, and there's a hell of a lot that can be done on a phone. But ultimately, it's the camera that we're actually talking about. Using a real camera. But a phone has opened up endless possibilities now for what to shoot and how to shoot. And I wanted to touch back on that first. But do you use your phone a lot for just general photos? Because I don't.
Well, yeah, I guess I do if I'm, out with people or whatever. We do quite a few when we're at a wedding together, don't we? We'll take some sort of selfies at the team or in it, stuff like that. Tends to be with a selfie stick and a phone, despite all the expensive camera equipment we have with us. We tend to do it on a phone because it's just easier, isn't it? And, they're more throwaway photos, I guess. They're not, although they're good for the moment and it's a good record, they're not like special photos, they're not like your wedding photography or all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I use them generally. I use it a lot for messaging people. So, the landlord needs a meter reading, I'll just take a picture of it and send it,
Yeah. I guess that's how I use mine, really.
That is, by the way.
Yeah. I was going to say, I guess, I guess I'm the same, really. I use it for, I suppose, not for social stuff, really. For factor, I'm talking about social home stuff. I'm talking about social from the social media point of view. But I guess I use exactly for that, for taking readings or documenting something for someone, or to downloading receipts. Or our accounts are online now, so it's a matter of taking a picture of a receipt and then getting it uploaded. So that's really that's the tool for me. Whereas a lot of people use their phone for lots of family pictures, which is fine, but a lot of people use them for trying to get some real creative stuff, don't they? Because there was a time going back, was it iPhone were doing a series of ads going back a few years ago where on these billboards, it actually said something like this was shot on an iPhone.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have briefly spoken about that before. And yes, obviously by, I guess, advertising laws, it has to be shot by an iPhone. But what they're not telling you is the lighting rig that they probably had on set to aid said iPhone. But you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, there's a lot more that can go into it. I found that when I was away and I traveled earlier this year, I went to Jordan, and that was the first time I used my phone actually for the joy of wanting to take some pictures whilst on holiday, because I never take a camera with me. I know you do. I always prefer.
I can't believe you went to Petra and didn't bring a camera with you. I can't believe it. But anyway.
But I actually discovered my camera phone for the first time. And when I say I really discovered it for the first time, is because I put it into manual mode and I was doing aperture settings, shutter settings, which I really enjoyed doing. But I was getting some really good stuff. The downside is I know that those pictures look great on a phone, and yes, they could enlarge up to maybe an 8x6, something like that, right? Something like that, possibly. But the quality is not going to be there. Okay, and I don't plan to blow any of them up big, which is why I didn't take a camera with me, because I'm much like a lot of other people when it comes to family pictures and home stuff. I'll look at pictures online on a screen rather than sort of looking at printed images. Although I find that quite sad that that's the case. But I came across an article where a photographer went out and shot some pictures of Matt Smith, and the photographer in question was Greg Williams. Now, this is going back quite some time ago, because this was an article in an old GQ magazine that I came across, and the photographer in question, Greg Williams, he's a well-known photographer. He's gone out and shot everyone from Daniel Craig to Brad Pitt, Tom Hardy. He's shot a lot of the British GQ covers along the way. But he was given an iPhone a few years ago, and I think looking at the article, it says an iPhone 12 Pro Max. So now I think that's...
Okay, so hang on. Just to make sure everyone's aware, this isn't the general iPhone. This is like the Max version of it, which most people don't have.
Right.
I haven't got one. My iPhone is just, this is a 13, I think. I don't even know what it is, but it's certainly not the Pro Max. I haven't got a zoom on here, not an optical zoom anyway. It's just got the two lenses, because they get really big and they won't fit in my car. Well, in the compartment where I put my phones for the sat nav, so it's kind of pointless for me. Plus, I've got a big camera anyway.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because I didn't know that was the case. iPhone 12 Pro Max, so I just thought it was one of the standard ones. So you're talking at the time it came out, was it pretty much top end, would you say?
Oh, it would be the top of top end. So I think I'm not an expert on it, but I think there's 3 versions of, say, like my phone. So there's my phone, and then I think you got the iPhone Pro and the iPhone Pro Max, something like that. I think there's 3. It could be 2. I can't.
Right.
But I do remember looking at the prices and going, not a chance.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you're making a living out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
It would,
So Greg Williams was trying this camera out, and he took out this actor for some photos. And what he does in the article, he talks about, he went out for about half an hour, and he goes on to give his tips and advice on how you can get the most out of your camera phone. And I wanted to go through those. Looking at the images that he shot, they all look like fairly standard images. They all look good, because you can tell the photographer, it's all about the posing and what he's getting, Matt Smith to do and everything. But one of the things that he does talk about is he says I always favor timeless to trendy.
Yeah.
It says, when I was starting out, I was absolutely obsessed with Magnum photographers and the golden age of cinema, Eve Arnold, Elliot Erwitt, and everyone who took those beautiful black and white photos from the movie sets. And Marlene Dietrich springs to mind, some stunning images of her, as it were, from so many of those cinema legends shot in black and white in those days. It says, it goes on to say, because I don't like my shots much, and the technology is so good now, you can create modern day classics in monochrome with the right know-how. He says, I use manual exposure here, because if you rely on any phone's auto exposure, it would have turned all that black into grey. Yeah. That's one of the things I talk about.
That's what all camera meters do, though. It doesn't matter what camera you've got. You stick it on auto, it'll it goes for medium grey, doesn't it? It's zone 7, I think, in the zone system, zone 5.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you do a picture of something black, like a black coat or something, it will come out grey.
Yeah. And looking through the pictures, the thing that strikes me the most is composition. Really, that's what makes the pictures. And he does actually go on to say in the next part of it, he says, I compose in lots of different ways, but one thing I love is that sense point perspective when everything's just coming straight towards you. Now, I've said this before, but when somebody says to me, oh, I love your photos, how did you take that? It's such a good photo. And that it could be a picture of a park bench, but they'll say, oh, how did you take that? And I always say it's just because I've just looked at it more. I've just looked at it differently. I haven't just gone and just taken a click picture. I've actually thought about, what's going to look good, what's going to be the best composition, what's going to be the best perspective. So I'm just looking at things in more detail, and my experience allows me to do that as well. So I can make a park bench look a hell of a lot better than most other people would say with a camera, because I know sort of what I'm looking for. And it's not because it's a different park bench, it's exactly the same park bench, but it's a far better photo. And the answer usually to that is composition is really what's on it. Yes, you could go into focus, you can go into depth of field, you can go into all of those things, but essentially it's the actual composition of an image. And so he was saying that on the iPhone, he liked playing with the iPhone's brilliance filter on these kind of shots, as it brightens up areas that are a little too dark. So he's put this thing into manual mode, which is really what I did when I took when I went off to Jordan, and I was really able to tweak the camera settings to exactly how I wanted the photos, and I was able to create some beautiful silhouettes, some beautifully overexposed images, slightly underexposed, some perfectly exposed images, dropping things in and out of focus where I wanted to. It felt like using a DSLR, because I was familiar with the settings. That's the thing. I think most people, that if you give them the camera, they put it into manual mode. I'm talking about your average person here, somebody who hasn't got any experience in photography, will look at their manual setting in their cameras and think, well, I'm not going to use that, and they'll just leave it on auto and just click, and the cameras do take perfectly good pictures. So he gives us his 8 tips for the perfect photo. And so I'm just going to read through those. I don't think they're in any particular order. So I'll just start with number 1 here. And he says, empathy is everything. So tell me whether, what your take is on this, Mark. And he says, more often than not, I'm an element within my photos. So you sense an interaction that made for a genuine, authentic moment. So you sense an interaction that's made for a genuine, authentic moment. So Matt's been a mate of mine for a while, but some people are deeply introverted people. So you can't be bantering away with them. The biggest skill a photographer can have is empathy and knowing when to shut up and when to talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's half the skill as social photographers, that we, you have to relate to different people. When I do my family stuff, I have to relate to a 2-year-old, and I also have to relate to a 92-year-old. That it's about having that, and you're right. You can spot straight away the people who are up for the banter and the people who maybe not so. And the whole idea of that kind of chit chat is to make people feel a bit more relaxed. But if they are, like it says, introverted, going in a jokily and bantery is probably going to make that person feel worse. So yeah, no, absolutely. You need to read the room, as it were.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, and a lot of people talk about this with street photography, and they might see some great pictures from somewhere and say, wow, why is my street photography not like this? And it's usually because of the interaction that people have had, the interaction that a photographer's had with the subject. I've gone out and done street photography, and I've spoken to my subjects before I've actually taken any photos of them. I've gone up to them, just had a chat with them. Hey, I'm doing some photos. I tell this to students: talk to people. Don't sneakily take photos. Actually talk to people and engage them, and they'll take an interest in you, and then you'll be more interested in them. So
you worry that you lose a bit of authenticity with that, though?
Not at all, because after a while, once I say to them, I say, right, all I want you to do is just carry on what you do and ignore me. And then after a few seconds, they've gone. It's gone completely. I'm there. They've completely forgotten about me, because I'm now not a barrier for them at all. And because I've spoken to them initially without my camera, I've just got my camera in my bag, or it's strapped around my back. I'm telling them what I'm doing. I don't chat to them for ages. I keep it quite short, quite snappy. And I'll say, look, I'm really sorry you're busy, but just take a few pictures.
Snappy.
All right, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
got, I'll step away, I'll step forward. There's a way of doing it, and you get that authenticity, but
Mm.
you get it even better than had you been trying to do it, because you have just engaged with that person, and that person now for a while is going to play up to the camera, but they do forget. Suddenly they've forgotten. If you're good at what you do and you're quick, they'll forget that you're actually there.
Mm. Mm.
Number two, he says, lean into the camera. It says, when you connect with someone over the camera, that changes everything. Whenever I used to shoot my mum, she'd pull her smile back into her neck, giving the classic double chin pose. You don't just smile with your mouth, though. You smile with your face and your eyes. Get people to lean forward, bring them to life, whether that's with a joke or whatever. Most photos are a bit like holiday photos, in that they are guard down and relaxed. And again, it's having that interaction with somebody. That's really what that's
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's pretty much linked to the first one, really. I mean, I guess there's a bit of positional thing going on, to stop people doing that chin thing. But yeah, I mean, if people are relaxed, then they won't do that stiff smile. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And this is where I've always said that, that for the best photographers create images. Those for, yes, there's always going to be the spontaneous photos that you just don't know that are going to happen. I agree with all of that. But the best photographers they do create photos. So number three, stick with it. He says, there have definitely been times when I've shot an actress who's at the end of a bloody awful day's press, and the last thing she needs to do is giggle at me over the camera. There are others when I've been politely asked to bugger off, but I keep persevering and got lovely pictures that the person was really grateful for. You've got to do it with a smile and a really positive attitude. Stick with it, do it with a smile, really positive attitude. Yeah, nothing could be, like more accurate than that. That's just so, you know what it's like when we've been on a shoot all day and when we've been working with people, you've still got to make that, you've still got to have that energy and enthusiasm, or at least they need to see that enthusiasm and that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And being polite, I mean, I don't do a lot of the celebrity stuff, so I can imagine if an actor or musician has been doing press all day, then the last thing they want to do is another blooming photo. And we get that with wedding clients as well, don't we? There's a time when you can just tell they've had enough of having a photograph taken, and you just got to leave them be for a bit.
Yeah.
Because otherwise because you're just trying to get the best for them, and deep down so do they. But it can be quite overbearing if you're not careful, and if you just constantly do it, they're not. Photos are only part of their day. It's for a photographer, it's the complete day. It's all about photos. But for the bride and groom, it's not. It's only part of their day, and the other part of that day is having a good time with their mates and family. So yeah, you do have to read it sometimes. If you've been doing it's very intense part, isn't there, after the wedding ceremony, when you're doing all the group shots, you're trying to get them done as quickly as possible. Uncle Jeff is probably either on the toilet or at the bar, and you've got to find them. And you've been doing that for about 20 minutes, half an hour. Then you do the romantics, which might be another 20 minutes, half an hour. So it's an hour of them just having photos. And of course, if you were with them doing getting ready shots, then you were constantly buzzing around them there as well, possibly doing a few post shots there. So by the time the ceremony's done, that could be like 3 or 4 hours of photography.
That's right. Yeah, it's intense.
And you got to kind of go, you know what? They probably need a break from this. And you just got to read it again. It's like I said before, reading the room. I guess that's the same with celebs as well. Sometimes just let them have a drink or a coffee or something, and then do it.
And pick up on it.
I guess. I mean, it's a bit different with celebs, isn't it? Because of the timings.
Yeah. So number 4 of the it says move to find the right angle, and he says one of the first things I teach in my photography course is people getting people to move. Right. It says you can have this horrible thing where someone sees a picture and they'll zoom in, tweak a bunch of stuff, and they don't get up. Once you're moving about and have learned how to read light, you're really thinking like a photographer. Again, it's so true. This, people will just they'll see a picture, think I'll take a picture of that, and then what they'll do is they'll create their image by zooming in and out. Remember, you're using a phone here, so you're just pinching on the screen in and out and whatever. But it doesn't mean that they've got the best angle just by zooming in. Everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to zoom in as close as I can. People will not move. They seem rooted to the spot. The camera will do everything for you. The camera will autofocus for you. It will set your exposure for you. It will, you can set it on auto ISO. It will put all your settings right. But the one thing it won't tell you to do is where to take the picture from. It won't say, oh, hang on a minute. If I was you, I'd move to the other side of the road, or I'd move a little bit to the left. I'd move a little bit to the right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
AI
Right. So,
be,
basically, to move with your camera, okay, and move with your phone. That's what this is about. And it says number 5, the best camera is the one you have with you. Of course, it is.
I mean, we've heard that before. I mean, he's not the first to say that.
I take my photos on my iPhone all the time, he says, because you can do so much with it now. I recreated Muhammad Ali's underwater boxer shot with Nicholas Hoult on my phone. I can shoot 300 frames in a row of someone running towards me, but a lot of the time it's simply the thing I've got with me. So I see a picture and my iPhone is ready for it. The fact that you can work in lower light is great now, and the added exposure control is a game changer. Well, I found that out on my Samsung that I've got, and it's once you go into that manual setting, you realize that there is so much that you can do with it again. But it's being familiar, and I could do it really quickly because obviously I could flick it into manual and I saw shutter, aperture, ISO, and I knew what to do with it straight away. But for some people, they may not know that. But once you do, as he says, the exposure control is a game changer. Number 6, try to take photos that will last. It says a great photo is something you want to go back to and look at more than once. I can look at pictures and smell things. You want to look at a picture and laugh or feel someone a bit better. One of the things I've always said, Marcus, particularly when it's family photos, you can go somewhere great, like, going to Petra and all over Jordan, seeing some great things. And I took a lot of views, some lovely landscapes. Okay. And lovely views, right? However, the one thing I didn't do was go crazy on that. I made sure that I had some family with me, that the family were in the pictures, because that's what this trip was about. It's a family holiday. It's a family trip. It's a family journey. This was, and having somebody in those photos, in those great views, makes them even more special. In amongst them, there was the odd few that were dotted around,
I mean, I have to say, I don't find, I haven't got the Pro Max or whatever it was that guy had. I tend to find that because the phone's lens is so wide, I don't think it tends to do the landscapes that well, really. I think cityscapes maybe a bit more because there's more things going on and stuff. But if you're just doing a landscape like you were in a desert, which is pretty flat, and I don't know, I tend to find the phones in general, they don't really tend to do it justice, I find. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me.
Oh, they don't. I think most cameras, when you're somewhere that's just incredible, it's being there and having that experience.
Yeah.
And that's quite, you know what? I think a lot of people miss that experience because they're too engrossed in their phones these days. They've got this, they're one of the most amazing places in the world, wherever you could be, and they're viewing the whole thing on their phone.
People will just that, because after they take the photo, they then got to stick it on Instagram straight away.
I've seen the mother of the bride countless times watching her watching her daughter walk down the aisle, and she's filming it, and she's watching her daughter walking, but she's watching it on her phone. She's not watching her actual daughter walking down the aisle, and
especially when you've employed videographers.
And I find that really sad that the phone just got up straight away, and that you don't have to shoot anything and everything. And I think that it just becomes a habit. You know what it's like? We see it at weddings where people don't put their phones away. The phones are just in their hands, all the time. It's just attached to them somehow. And so I think that that's where the phones have been detrimental to the experience of so many things. It said number 7, follow the greats. He says on Instagram, and just look at photographers, great photographers, people that you like, and try and get some ideas from them to see what they do. So basically he's saying learn from others. Number 8, the last one, he says sometimes lo-fi works best. He says I do much of my work on my own in available light and often in an incredibly short space of time. And we know that feeling, right? If it's at the Academy Awards, you might have 5 or 10 seconds to take a shot. At a hotel before the premiere of a film, you might have even 90 seconds. I think I've said this before. Going back many years ago, I had to go do some photos of Katie Price at an event, and there was a group of about 4 or 5 photographers. We were working for the PR agency, and they said, and we could go up to her individually and get a photo of her. And basically, she gave me no more than about 5 seconds, and that was it. I'd hardly had time to put my camera up, bring my camera up to the eye, get the photo, and she was saying, "Right, that's it, that's your lot." It was just, and I got what I needed, and luckily also because I wasn't the first one that stepped forward, I saw somebody else go before me. So you had to just whack it straight out without any thought or anything. At this year's Oscars, I shot Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin, that's it, yeah. And Rooney Mara in an apartment block, stoop outside the Netflix party.
This wasn't Cam, by the way. This is
No, this is because it was just me, them, my camera, and a box of vegan burgers. The paparazzis who were just across the street didn't see us. It was such a lo-fi shoot that no one noticed, and it became the photo of the night. And not everything has to be planned and pre-planned, does it? That's they're the spontaneous moments, aren't they? They're the ones that happen, outside the
I am questioning the vegan burgers, but never mind.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So anyway, some interesting stuff. I think everyone's got some tips of how to use their phones and get better photos. But explore the manual settings on your phones. They're worth doing
as well, though. I mean, I think that list isn't really necessarily about iPhones or Samsung phones.
Oh no, it's not. No,
I'd suggest a lot of that is general stuff you need to do anyway.
Yeah.
Whether you're using a DSLR or a drone or whatever it is, there's a lot of stuff in there that actually you need to, looking up the grades and, the sort of reading the room kind of stuff and all that. I think that's just general. I think even in the film days, I think you needed to know all of that. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, despite it being iPhones and that, the basics are still the same as when I was learning film during my A levels, just getting more into the distant past as more than I'd like. But yeah, so yeah, it's good. I mean, like I said, the phone that he's using is quite it's not the basic model, it's not the standard model, it's definitely the next one.
It's the top end one, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. But I still reckon that if we turned up to a wedding with nothing but iPhones, I think the bride and groom might have something to say.
Exactly. Right. Okay. Mark, I think it's time for a quick drink.
Yes.
Okay, right, guys. Going back earlier today, this was news that came out today on the BBC. India's space agency has released the first images of the moon taken by the Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft, which entered lunar orbit on Saturday. The images show craters on lunar surface getting larger and larger as the spacecraft draws closer. Chandrayaan-3 lander and rover are due to reach the surface on 23rd of August. And it says, if successful, India will be the first country to perform a controlled soft landing near the South Pole. It will also become only the 4th to achieve a soft landing on the moon after the US, the former Soviet Union, and China. After the spacecraft orbited the Earth for about 10 days, it was sent into the translunar orbit last Tuesday and successfully injected into the lunar orbit on Saturday. And they've sent some pictures through of the moon. It says there's not that many missions to the moon, are there?
No, they kind of interest kind of waned, I think, didn't it? But I think everyone keeps talking about Mars now. But I think they're going to do some more, is what I've heard. I think
well,
sort of
I read the
revamp it up again.
Yeah, I read the article in detail, and they were saying that the south pole of the moon is still largely unexplored. It says the surface area that remains in the shadow there is much larger. Remains in shadow. There is much larger than that of the moon's north pole, and scientists say it means there is a possibility of water in areas that are permanently shadowed. So it's a huge sort of scientific breakthrough that the south of the moon has never been explored, and there's not really been any or many pictures that have been taken of it. But the actual image that we're talking about, there's only one image. It looks like it's been shown, and it's the moon looks like a greeny sort of color. And obviously it says that a series of images sent by Chandrayaan show the craters on the lunar surface getting larger and larger as the spacecraft gets closer, which you'd expect. But these craters, I think, look to be absolutely huge. But the detail that you've got within that is absolutely incredible. I guess the way I can describe it is it's like, when you zoom in on something, we've just been talking about phones. If you zoom in onto a subject on your iPhone or whatever phone, the more you zoom into it, the picture just starts to, you just lose that little bit of quality. And that's what this looks like a little bit. But, it's amazing to see that there's so much that is still untapped out there.
Well, there's so much. I mean, there has only been 12 people that walked on the moon.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because you thought since what was it, 69, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That you'd have thought that there'd be pretty houses on the moon by now, right? People living on the moon by now. But it's so surprising. But I think I was just about to say there's nothing there really to actually see. But if there's water there, then there's that possibility of life and that type of thing. But anyway, this is just a quick sort of thing because we don't have any more picture about the actual photo other than that this photo has been sent and it's showing the south pole of the moon. So it's quite historic, but it doesn't say what it was shot with, what camera it was shot with, anything else at all, or at least it isn't in the 3 or 4 articles that I've looked at. But it's pretty groundbreaking.
Right then. Well, yes, there's a bit of bad news really for the photography community because I'm not sure if you know this guy. I had seen his work before and I had heard of this. In fact, one of our listeners, Craig, he actually messaged us about this as well. So it seems like there's a bit of interest about this guy. But there's a French climber photographer called Remi Lucidi. And unfortunately, he's been found dead in Hong Kong, believed to have fallen from a high-rise building whilst attempting one of his climbs and photography. Now, do check his social media stuff because some of the photographs that this guy's taken is incredible, mainly because of where he is and, quite frankly, the kahunas you got to have to do this sort of thing. You'll never see me doing any of this, quite frankly. So the social media is he's got a sort of a social media name called Remi Enigma, which is kind of how I knew. I didn't really knew his real name was Lucidi, to be fair. Yeah, so basically he was in Hong Kong and he was climbing a skyscraper in Hong Kong. And it seems that he came into some sort of difficulty. Apparently, there was someone has basically said that he was knocking on some of the windows. I think maybe to have some help, which is really, really sad. Yeah. So basically, at about 7:30 p.m. local time on the Thursday, asking to be let in. He was basically knocking on the windows. So yeah, it's really sad, but. Well, it is really sad. There's no but about that. He was only 30 years old, and he's obviously a talented guy. He's obviously a very experienced guy when it comes to climbing. But it does come into. I have a little question about it, and I don't know really how. I want to be completely respectful because I know the guy has died, but there's a certain responsibility that I guess someone has to sort of take on when you're doing this. I mean, he could have landed on someone. This was an urban setting, it wasn't on top of a cliff in the middle of nowhere. He could have landed on someone, he could have landed on a car, he could have caused an accident. And I just don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. I understand part of the allure of what he does is the danger. And I get that when it's just danger of himself. A lot of these extreme climbers, unfortunately, they do, I've heard he's not the first one I've heard that this has happened to. And I do wonder where the responsibility, if he had landed on someone, that other person would be dead too. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Cam? Where do you see it?
Yeah, Mark, as you said, and you said exactly right, actually, in that we have to be respectful of what's happened here because somebody who's died so young.
Yeah, he has a son. He may have a partner. And
yeah, exactly. And
he's got
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's not everything has been reported because we don't quite know what's what. There's one or two other reports I've read here where one of his pals says his death was not accidental because it's impossible for skilled climbers, it's impossible for skilled climbers to fall.
Yeah, I mean, I read that as well, but he does then concede that he did get into difficulties. So
yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, I mean, you can't take it for granted. I mean, recently, Mark, we've had a couple of stories, haven't we, where someone was hit with a camera. There was a TV camera that struck a protester recently. There's all sorts of accidents and things that happen, no matter how careful you
Not
are
sure
with
that
everything.
protester was necessarily accidentally hit. I don't know.
No, yeah, maybe he wasn't. That's right. Yeah. And this guy was doing something that was beyond brave, what he was trying to do. And yes, he was getting some incredible images, and why he couldn't have taken those images with a drone or something in this day and age, right?
Well, I'm guessing that, but like I said,
but that's part of the charm. Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
that he's
the
final frontier of photography, or I guess that kind of thing.
Yeah. But I've seen since then, and I think it's because we did this story, but I've seen no end of things that have come up on my feed where I've seen clips of photographers at an event or at a shoot or something. They've stepped back and they've fallen into a swimming pool, or they've tripped. There was a great, sorry, it's not. I don't mean to say it was a great one. There was one that I had to watch it 3 or 4 times because he was shooting an artist on stage, and he stepped back and he fell off the stage. And I don't know how badly he was hurt, and that's not the first time that's happened. These things happen all the time. And as photographers, it's very easy to trip and fall over something. I mean, we're faced with so much health and safety stuff in this day and age, and I found I've become a little bit paranoid about it. I'll now go to shoots, and I'll make sure that I tidy up around me. I clear up once I've got all my lights set up, I make sure that there's no trip hazards. You have to take those things seriously.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think these battery powered lights could be a godsend, but that's nothing stopping anyone from tripping over one of the light stands that you've got, because and there is a right way and a wrong way to put up a light stand. There's a right way and a wrong way to put your camera on a tripod, and so when you've got a light stand, you've got a tripod, you need to know how to actually put it up and keep it safe. But so even from your everyday photographer's point of view, there's always a risk of not just of damaging your equipment or injuring yourself, but really of injuring another person, injuring a third party.
Yes, which is why we all have public liability insurance.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah. And fair play to this guy. He broke new ground. He did things where he took things very much to the edge, and paid the price for it. But the thing is in many ways, what he's done, someone else is going to do, and they're going to get even more daring, because as each generation goes on, everything gets more and more daring. Everything gets more and more sort of, they want to break the boundaries even more. So his work in future will stand the test of time for a few years, but after a few years, somebody else is going to be doing something even more dangerous.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's always going to be developed, but it's just going back to that responsibility of it, though. The person. So there was a maid in that room when he was knocking on the windows. I mean, and I think she went off to try and do something, and then he wasn't there, and that was the last time that he was seen. You just think, what's going through that person's mind?
That's right. Yeah.
Could I would be. I mean, could I have acted quicker, or blah 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 blah? You'll be constantly going through that.
Yeah.
And like I say, he is putting other people in danger.
I mean, there's a selfish aspect to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
I'm watching at the moment on Netflix the Formula One documentary, Drive to Survive.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
You see, I've never really been a huge Formula One fan. I've always found it quite dull. I'll watch what's on the first happening on the news and the reviews and think, oh, Lewis Hamilton won or Max Verstappen won. I'm always aware of the drivers because it's so out there. It's in the news, but I can't sit and watch it. But someone said to me ages ago, oh, you got to watch it. If you watch it, you'll suddenly start to think of Formula One is very different. And I've only watched part of the first series, and I think there's 4 series to it.
And they're catching up to do.
Yeah, and during that first series, I think 1 or 2 of the drivers, one driver in particular, says, "I'm not worried about death. I'm not worried about driving like this. This is the risk I take, and dying and death doesn't worry me." Now, it may not worry him, okay, but that driver has got family that's going to be left behind.
Yeah.
That driver has got a whole team of people, has got a team of investors.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it is quite different, though.
It's
I
got
know what you're saying.
fans, right? They've got all the people that are very close to them. Forget the fans, forget the supporters for a moment. The people that were responsible for building that car, putting him in that car, and training him and driving him to that point when and he says that, hey, I'm not afraid of dying. Now you might actually say, is that really brave? Wow, he's brave. God, he must he's on the edge. I admire that in somebody. Or do you actually say, do you know what? That's pretty selfish.
I think it's a bit different, to be honest with you, because actually Formula One, I mean, the casualties are minimal these days. I mean, the way they designed the car, I think it really changed when Senna died. It really changed. They've really changed the car. The car just crumples and takes all the impact, and the driver walks off scot-free. That happens a lot. I think someone has died in the last couple of years.
Is it Leclerc or something? I think that's the episode I'm watching. Was it? There was no Bianchi. Was it Bianchi?
Bianchi.
Bianchi.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm not big on Formula One.
Yeah.
But yes, someone did die recently.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I mean, that was the one you on season 1, so that was about 4 years.
It's 2018. It's about 2018, 2019.
Yeah. So yeah. But I guess that's a bit different because you're putting yourself in danger. You're putting other drivers in danger. And there is definitely a sort of a code of conduct between the drivers, isn't there? And if someone slightly goes out of it, if you watch Drive to Survive, you'll know that these drivers do have pretty much a pop at each other if they feel that code of conduct.
Oh God, yeah, that's right, yeah.
So there is that kind of that in the, but back in like the 70s or 60s, whatever, with Formula One, I mean, you had like bystanders, watchers that they could go onto the track, take photographs, and then get out of the way before the car comes around. I mean, you can't do that anymore because
that's right. Yeah,
horrifically dangerous. So, and it's different, and the responsibility really is by Formula One. These people who are climbing these towers. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of this particular one for Remi, but did he get permission to climb that tower? I'm guessing not.
Well, yeah, there was something. There was something. I think it's in the article where a friend says that it wasn't an accident because it just doesn't happen. But it goes on to say something like that the security guys tried to stop him. Now that could have been a different. I'm looking at it here. It says security officers. Here we go. It says security guard tried to stop Lucidi, but the daredevil was already on his way to the top of the building. Now I'm assuming it's the same building we're talking about. I'm hoping it's not a previous story we're referring to. It says CCTV footage shows Lucidi taking the lift to the 49th floor before taking stairs to the top. Security officers looking for Remi later found a hatch to the roof open. Police found the man's camera at the scene, which contained videos of other.
So he's doing something illegal, then, isn't he? He hasn't got permission. He hasn't. You're talking about risk assessments when public liability insurance and all that kind of stuff that we have to do for someone to trip over a tripod.
Yeah,
this guy's going up on a building, and he's putting other people's lives at risk here. Like I say, I want to be really respectful because the guy has died, and I don't want to be like kicking a man when he's down. As I guess.
No, I think we have done. But I think the security guard, for example.
Then on the flip side, sorry if I may, the flip side is you wouldn't get that stunning photography unless you had these people doing what they do.
They're willing to do it.
I am incredibly conflicted by it.
Yeah.
There was a documentary I watched. I can't remember when it was. I might even been when I was at art college. I cannot remember. But it was about these high wire artists. Right?
I know, yeah.
Just walking across. And they wanted to do this. It was between two buildings. It might have even been the Twin Towers. I cannot remember. It was two iconic buildings, and they basically did it. So, he based tightrope, isn't it? So he basically did tightrope across these two buildings, right? There's no. I don't think he had any safety harness or anything like that, But they were documenting it. I had a video, and they tried several times, I think, to get past security, and eventually they managed to do it. So it was an illegal act, And you kind of, when you're watching this video, you're kind of going, yeah, well done to the tightropers, these guys are, but no, actually, that person could have fallen on someone and been killed. But we need the daredevil. So I am conflicted by it. It's a strange one, really, because his work, going back to Remi here, his work is very good. You do feel something when you see those images. You do get that kind of vertigo feeling.
You do, yeah. Yeah, and let's, yeah,
that's powerful. That is powerful.
It is. And let's finish off that by giving a nod to his genius, really, and his and his bravery. Let's because it was brave, regardless of the other things that we've spoken about, and the stunning images that he created. And as I was saying, somebody else is going to break new ground, but he set those boundaries now. He's explored those things, which now makes other people want to explore other things as well, and that's the way the world has evolved. So you have to tip your hat to him, and and condolences to his family and friends. James Bond, Mark. Everyone.
Ding 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 ding. Yeah.
Everyone
Who's
loves
that guy. I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah. Everyone loves Bond, don't they? Let's be honest. They do.
I think in certain parts of their life they do. I mean, I'm pretty much past Bond these days, but
I would say that it's still probably the only film that I would want to go and see in a cinema.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the last few.
Yeah. No, I've seen them all in cinemas. Okay. But anything else, I'm not fussed. I always think I've got to go and see Bond in the cinema. It's almost tradition now. Got to go to the cinema. It's James Bond.
Yeah. I mean, it's that, and I don't mean this as a funny dig or laugh or anything. It's that because there is about 10 or so years between us, isn't there? So
yeah.
Do you reckon it's something to do with that? Do you reckon?
No, I don't.
Because Bond, when I was growing up, Bond wasn't that popular, really. There was a big break between the Dalton years, so he only did 2, didn't he? And then you had it kind of revamped with Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
There was a big gap, wasn't there, between
there.
So Bond really wasn't.
I guess, yeah.
And but looking back on some of those Roger Moore ones, where he rustles up a quiche. I mean, come on.
Okay, so Bond dates very easily. Bond is very if you think about it, each Bond film is very much of its time.
Yeah.
I think the recent Daniel Craig ones, I think will stand the test of time better. I think the Sean Connery 60s ones, to a certain extent, people sort of see that, yes, look, I know this is old, but it's still relevant. Once you got to the 70s and the 80s, I think it's a bit dodgy ground there, really.
Well, I think there's dodgy ground through all of them. If you're casting your modern day view, of it, I mean, he is a character that was born in. I mean, I don't know when did Fleming write these? I can't remember. I don't even know. Was it? I'm guessing before the 60s.
I reckon it's probably. I would have said 50s.
Yeah,
I would have said 50s. Yeah, so, late 50s probably.
Actually, some of the Connery stuff is quite, on the edge when his relationship with women. I don't think.
Yeah.
It's almost dare I say it, quite rapey in places. It's uncomfortable. But there is an iconic. I mean, the Connery Bond is probably the most iconic out of all of them. Despite that, the whole Goldfinger thing and no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. All this sort of stuff. Blofeld and the cat, and it's But I mean, if you really look, I mean, I guess when they show them on TV now, they probably cut certain scenes out because I don't really think it's suitable for modern day viewing. Because people will take offense by it. And actually,
probably,
with some of those scenes, I can see why.
And
whereas the Craig ones, I guess, have that in mind when they're made.
They do, yeah. Now, so the reason why I sort of talk about this is because I was looking through some stuff online recently. It's going back a little while ago, and I came across some Bond images, and I thought to myself, "Oh, that looks really cool," And there were pictures of Daniel Craig. And as I scrolled through the article, there was one of George Lazenby, and he was sitting by a pool, and he was sitting on a sunbed in his trunks, and and behind him is a woman standing in a bikini on a phone, right? And but shot in black and white. And what struck me was how good and timeless these images actually are, which is very different from the films. Okay, the films date, but the photos have far more of an iconic, timeless feel about them. There's
Well, I
something,
guess
there's
as well.
something really magical about those photos. Short,
Yeah, but is that because of, especially with the Connerys, the 60s stuff, basically, is what we're talking about, isn't it?
well, the thing is there's Roger Moore. I mean, a lot of these pictures were
Yeah.
shot by a photographer, Terry O'Neill, and
Yeah, because
he, and he's best known as one of the guys who shot so much in the 60s. Him and David Bailey were, at the forefront, weren't they, of shooting celebrities and everything else that was going on around there. But he captured a lot of the photography, a lot of the Bond characters from the 60s and the 70s, with Live and Let Die with Roger Moore, George Lazenby from Russia, no, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, I think it was.
Well, yeah, it was the Military-Man, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then you've got Live and Let Die with Roger Moore, and they came across some contact sheets of the classic of Roger Moore in his black polo neck jumper, holding that little gun,
Walter
right?
PPK.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just sort of that 3/4 look, and then the look with his eyes. That sultry look with his just lifting his eyes up, and his eyebrow goes up, and holding the gun. And there's a whole series of contact sheets that you can look at, and those pictures really stand the test of time. Yes, we know they're old, but there's a great picture of Sean Connery, and he's just sitting on the set of Diamonds Are Forever. And what he's doing is he's just holding a camera, and he's looking at the photographer through the camera that he's holding. And just the camera just looks timeless. The camera looks retro. It looks really cool. Everything about the images just looks just timeless compared to the films.
Well,
Which goes,
if I may, I don't think they are timeless. I think they're actually of a time. From what I think. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we're looking at some of them now. Do you not look at that and think it, because I don't think they are timeless. I think that is showing it a certain time. Don't get me wrong; they're iconic, yes, but
if you look at, we're looking at a picture of Sean Connery sat on a sheriff's motorbike, and he's got black suit, black tie, white shirt. Take the bike away, and he could be there today, right, in a very classic style.
I don't know.
There he is in his white, in his white tux, black bow tie. There's just something about the image. I'm comparing it to the film, Mark. I'm sort of saying that the stills seem to stand the test of time better.
Well, I think that's different. They do stand the test of time, but I wouldn't necessarily say they're timeless. They stand the test of time because they are very classic. This is like classic Hollywood stuff. That it's almost like a genre in its own right. If you were to take a shot like this today, it would be considered, oh, you're taking something in the classic Hollywood feel. I mean, we were talking about that in the story earlier with the photographer with the iPhone. He likes the golden age of Hollywood, and that is all that black and white stuff, and the sort of the contrast and all that kind of thing. I think I feel in some respects, I don't know if this is the same all around the world, but with us, the British, we have this very rose-tinted version of the 60s. And I think Bond does come from that. We look at the Connery Bond. Oh yeah, it was very. I mean, it looks very glamorous. We're looking at this picture here. So I
can imagine shooting that with a groom at a wedding.
Yeah, but there was a certain glamour to this that is very 60s Bond. And it's not just 60s Bond; it's also Hollywood at that time. This could be Bogart. This could be anybody. For me, the fact that it's Bond kind of puts it in that place because we know who he is. And actually, I think the Roger Moore ones do look good, but they're not as iconic as the Connery ones because it doesn't have that 60s feel.
No, yeah.
And we do, as I say, us Brits, we love banging on about the swinging 60s. Well, I certainly wasn't around at that time, so I don't really have any connection to it. But you know, it's Bond, it's the Beatles, it's the Stones, it's even a couple of gangsters. Look glamorous. The Craze. Even they look glamorous, and they were arseholes, basically. Excuse my French. But I hope
there's no comeback over that.
Yes,
I'm going to disassociate myself from that comment completely, guys.
Maybe. But you know what I mean. They beat up a lot of people. We've all seen the movies. I would be scared to have them in my neighbourhood. And the mods kicked the hell out of rockers and vice versa. There was a lot of violence. But we tend to skip over all of that. And it's imagery like this that kind of helps us skip over that. I mean, we're looking at some of the Roger Moore Bond ones here is Live and Let Die, which I actually think is his most iconic Bond film.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
which helps with Paul McCartney doing the soundtrack, I guess. But I don't have this fixation of Bond as a lot of people do, to be honest. When I was a kid, I kind of liked the cars and stuff. But
there's a coolness about it that you can't deny. I mean, the cars, say for example, the picture that the camera that Sean Connery's just sitting there holding was a camera of the time, obviously. But now when you look at that camera now, it's probably a Nikon F1 or something, Nikon F or something, whatever it is, right? It looks cool, and I think that's what it is. But you're right. I think you're exactly right in what you say. It is romanticized, that whole period. But I guess that was also groundbreaking within the photography. That's another reason why that stuff looks cool.
35mm was quite new, wasn't it? I mean, wasn't it that there's an advert around this time? I think it's for Pentax,
right?
And it was David Bailey was was a guest at a wedding, and there was a wedding photographer.
Olympus Trip 35.
The Olympus Trip. That's
I remember that advert.
And so 35mm was quite new. And it had basically the synopsis of this advert, if you haven't seen it, is this old school wedding photographer who's looking quite old in the tooth, scoffing at David Bailey for having this 35mm camera. Well, we all use 35mm cameras. In fact, technically we still do. It's just the digital versions. And that was a new invention, wasn't it? The Olympus. Was it the actual trip or was it the OM?
It was a trip. It was Olympus Trip.
It was the trip, was it?
Yeah.
So 35mm was kind of new and kind of cool as well. You get 36 shots and all this kind of stuff. You got Bond with a really good SLR, and it's all glamour, it's all expensive stuff. It's Aston Martins, it's
it's everything that looks cool. It's everything that's branded cool, isn't it? So
pretty much
good stuff. Okay, I just wanted to touch on that. I think
it's interesting.
About comparing the films to the stills, and that's really what it was. So
there is some fantastic work, and I think actually that's the real thing about it for me. Was photographers could break out of using things like 5.4 and medium format, and actually then had this new invention, which was the 35mm film. I can't remember how new it is. I think did it come out in the 60s? 35mm was it? Probably
it did. Yeah, 60s.
They may have used them in the war. I don't know. But it's relatively new in comparison. It's the same as. It's kind of weird. This episode has taken a good full circle now. We were talking about iPhones.
Actually,
the phone pictures phone now is probably the equivalent of what the 35mm was back then when people were just using medium and large format cameras. It's that new invention that makes photography more accessible to people. And that's exactly what the phone's done. It's made, and digital photography, digital cameras, and then the phone. It's made photography more accessible to people who wouldn't necessarily get into it. And that's what 35mm did, and that's what iPhones are doing now. So and I guess that's why you get a lot more of these photos and things like that.
Good stuff. I wonder, just to finish off, Mark, whether in 20, 30, 40 years someone's going to say, God, doesn't that iPhone 12 Max look really cool?
No, you see the big difference, I guess.
Whereas the Nikon F does.
Yeah, but the Nikon F does, because we are. It's kind of gone. So you had your large and your medium formats that did a certain amount of shots. Was it 15 on a 645, 12 on an SQ, and you get 2 on a 5.4. So images, and then you have like 24 and 36 on 35mm, and now it's thousands. There's no limit to the amount of photographs you can take. So it's oversaturated now for it to have that same sort of feeling, I think, as what you have with 35.
Yeah.
Next, I guess the next one it'll be just video, and you can just take stills off video. I think that'll be the next.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there'll be. Exactly.
Hopefully, I've retired by then.
Okay, good stuff, Mark. I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yes, we certainly shall.
I'll let. Do you want to finish it off? No, I'll finish it off.
You finish it off.
Okay, guys. So I have, guys. So, as we said before, if you enjoy the show, please make sure to support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Don't forget our Patreon. That's all new. You can follow us on the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and all of which will be linked in the show notes. And please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast apps, such as Spotify and Apple Podcast. We get lots of messages that come through from people saying, thank you, really enjoy listening to you guys. I've said this time and time again, but we do get these messages that say, I'm a photographer, I work on my own, I don't really have any other photographers that I talk to. And it's quite refreshing, because I feel that you guys, just listening to you guys, it's like having a chat with a couple of colleagues. And so if we're doing that, I think we're doing the right thing. Guys, thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Cheers.
Bye for now, guys.